So despite the extremely saturated gimbal market now, Zhiyun have been consistently killing it with their gimbal stabilizers for their DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. And this year, they've announced 2 brand new gimbal stabilizers, and we've got one of them to test for today, the Weebill LAB gimbal stabilizer. Let's take it for a spin. So the Zhiyun Weebill LAB is a brand new gimbal stabilizer that is supposed to be something similar to their Crane Plus, but a lot smaller. As you can see, when I unscrew this tripod, this is how big the gimbal actually is. It's tiny. And like the Crane Plus, it's designed for mirrorless cameras, but it can hold a lot more now, holding a payload of up to 3 kilograms, which is basically as much as its bigger brother, the Crane 2, can hold. So first impressions on the Zhiyun Weebill LAB. So the first thing you'll notice is it has a really big thing protruding off the handle. And what this allows you to do is, using the included tripod, if you take it out from the bottom and you screw it in at the top, what this gives you is an easier way to use the gimbal underslung, which Zhiyun listened to their feedback from their audience, and they said that it was a bit tacky to use and a bit difficult just flipping your gimbal upside down to use it. And so they've added this so it feels like the ergonomics of a Steadicam, which a lot of skateboarders and a lot of low angle shooters like to use. So this is a pretty nifty feature. Secondly, the actual size of the gimbal is tiny. As I said, when you unscrew that tripod off, it is really, really small. And when you unscrew the tripod off and put it into a bag or into its case, it actually folds down really small, so it allows you to travel with it a lot easier. In terms of setting up the gimbal, like any other Zhiyun gimbal, it's quite easy to do and it's a toolless design. But one of the best things about the Weebill LAB is that it has locks, so you can actually lock the gimbal, and so it doesn't fling around everywhere when you're trying to carry it or in your bag. And it's a lot easier as well when you're trying to pre-set up your camera to shoot. That is all there, unlock it, and you're away you go. So in terms of control-wise, on the left-hand side of the Weebill, there is a focus wheel that when you pair it with a mechanical follow focus that's attached to your lens, you can use it to basically adjust your focus. Below that, you've got a phone go button, which basically puts the gimbal into overdrive mode and strengthens up all its motors to its highest capacity, which is really good for people who like doing fast-paced work or really need to do fast, jagged movements. It helps a lot with that. Below that, you've got a pan, follow / locking mode, which you can just easily swap between the two. And below that is your on and off switch, which is now separated from the record button, which is fantastic. At the back, it's got a similar control panel to the Crane 2, which will allow you to use the joystick so you can move left, right, up and down, and has a record button for you to press as well. So when you have your camera attached to the actual gimbal, you can basically just press on and off record and use the back D-pad to control all your settings. And finally, there's a POV button as well that you can press in to put the gimbal into POV mode. So like their mobile gimbals, at the front of the gimbal, there's a little trigger that you can press. If you press it 3 times, it'll flip it to 180 mode, flip it 2 times to go back to the center, and holding it will lock the gimbal in place. So when you move it everywhere, it'll just stay in the one spot. And lastly, one of our favorite things about the Weebill is that it comes with a dual plate, which works on both Manfrotto and Arcosys compatible heads. And how it's constructed is that the Manfrotto plate is like a kind of little base, and then the Arcosys plate lifts into it, drops in, and doesn't slide. So what this allows you to do is, when you're finished with your shoot, you don't actually have to take the whole plate off. You can just take the Arca plate that's attached to your camera, undo it, and then when you go back to your next shoot, you can just slot it back on top and away you go. And finally, just a small thing we've noticed from the Weebill that's pretty cool is that you can adjust it at any angle and the motor doesn't try to fight back. So with all of that, let's take it for a test. We've got the GH5 loaded with the brand new firmware, which we have a little video on that up top. So let's take it for a spin. This is some intense gimbal action. So just the things I forgot to mention, at the back of the gimbal, it's got an offset motor, which means you can see your screen, and that's brilliant. The design of the actual gimbal in terms of build quality, it's predominantly plastic, which in comparison to the Zhiyun cranes are usually made out of metal. So that might take a bit to get used to. In hindsight, it does make the gimbal a lot lighter, so making it easier to travel with. The locks on the actual gimbal themselves, from our model that we've tested, they are a bit sticky and a bit clunky, but the model that we've got is a pre-production model, so this may not be the case in the final production model. So now I'm just going to go over the features of the Zhiyun Weebill LAB. So first off, it's got a payload of 3 kilograms, which is enough to hold most mirrorless systems and entry-level DSLR systems. It runs on two 18,650 mAh batteries, which is claimed to get you about 10-hour battery life. We've been using it for maybe about 2 hours now, and it's barely gone down, so we'd say that holds true. Thirdly, like the Zhiyun Crane series, it's got various time-lapse modes inbuilt, and also when you pair it with a mechanical follow focus, you can utilize the left wheel to basically get your focus. And lastly, the Weebill LAB has a first in the Zhiyun series, and it's basically your smartphone is able to unlock a whole plethora of features in the Weebill LAB. So first off, what your smartphone can do is you can connect to the actual gimbal wirelessly and get a full 1080p feed straight to your phone. So your phone can act like a monitor, which is absolutely awesome. Secondly, you can use your phone like a remote, so you can press on and off to record and adjust minimal settings such as your ISO and exposure. Thirdly, one of the coolest features about the phone usage is that if you have a second gimbal operator, you can hand them over the phone and they can basically wirelessly control the gimbal's movements just by using the phone's gyroscope and moving it left, right, up and down to control the gimbal, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, with all of these features, we can't test them at the moment because the Weebill LAB isn't actually out yet. So the support for it on the mobile app isn't out, but when it does come out, we'll give you a little video to test those features out. So performance-wise, like any other Zhiyun stabilizer, it stabilizes really well. All the footage that we've shot looks nice and smooth, and you're going to be pretty confident in it being able to hold your camera gear despite its size. So my final thoughts on the Zhiyun Weebill LAB. For anyone that's looking for a gimbal stabilizer that's really compact and still can stabilize their mirrorless kit or entry-level DSLR, then the Weebill LAB is definitely one of the best gimbal stabilizers out there for that use. It's small, it can hold a lot of weight, and it still has the full functionality plus more that most of the gimbals on the market already have. If you have any questions on the Weebill LAB, pop them in the comments below. Make sure to follow us on our Facebook, Instagram, and our blog, which links to those are in our description below to stay up to date with what we do install and written reviews on all the products we put through this channel. If you want to pre-order a Zhiyun Weebill LAB, links to those will be in our description as well as our pinned comment below. And as always, if you enjoyed our video, make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next video as we upload every Tuesday and Thursday. Like the crane series, the Zhiyun Weebill LAB keeps trying to say plus. My final thoughts on the Zhiyun Weebill Plus.